At AirVenture 2023, the world's biggest aviation gathering, a vintage Warbird, a North American AT-6D, spun out of control and slammed into Lake Winnebago. On board were two young aviators with bright futures, including the daughter of a former NFL Super Bowl champion. Now, the NTSB has dropped its final report, and the real story isn't just about a stall spin. It's about physics, human decision-making, and how unforgiving these old machines can be when the margins disappear. So, let's set the scene. It's the morning of July 29th, 2023, in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. If you've ever been to EAA AirVenture, you know it's complete sensory overload. Thousands of airplanes crammed into one place, constant arrivals, and spectators everywhere. That morning, the 1944-built AT-6D Texan, tail number November 49961, lifted off from runway 27. The flight itself seemed ordinary at first. The airplane climbed north, leveled off around 3,900 feet, and then turned out over Lake Winnebago, a big body of water just east of the field. DSB data shows the Texan was cruising along at about 110 miles per hour. Nothing unusual, but then came the maneuver that changed everything. A right turn followed quickly by a left turn. And here's where things started to unravel. During those turns, the airspeed bled off. Not dramatically, but enough to matter. By the time the plane rolled through that left turn, the calibrated airspeed had dropped to around 87 miles per hour. And that was the trap. For this airplane, at that bank angle, the accelerated stall speed was about 89. You don't need to be a math major to see what's about to happen. A witness on a boat later said he watched the airplane flatten into a spin. Not a nose-down spiral, but a flat, rotating pancake of an airplane. It stayed locked in that spin until it smacked the water. No fire, no recovery attempt, just a violent end to what should have been a simple sightseeing hop. Now, we have to pause here because who was on board matters. In the front seat was Devin Collie Riley, just 30 years old. She wasn't some random passenger. She was a pilot herself, and not just any pilot. Devin was the oldest daughter of Bruce Collie, who won 2 Super Bowls with the San Francisco 49ers. But her own identity was tied to aviation. She co-founded the Texas Warbird Museum with her husband Hunter, she ran a flight school, and she was absolutely obsessed with keeping the history of the women Air Force Service pilots alive. Her Instagram handle was literally Spirit.of.Fifinella, a nod to the WASP mascot. By the time of this crash, she'd logged almost 700 flight hours, with about 33 in the AT-6. Not a beginner, but also not a decades-deep Warbird veteran. In the back seat was Zachary Collie Moreno, just 20 years old. He was a family friend, and he wasn't just tagging along. Zach was working on his career as an aircraft mechanic. He'd already finished his A&P schooling. He was turning wrenches on Air Force jets at Randolph AFB in Texas. And he loved Warbirds so much that he volunteered with the commemorative Air Force Central Texas Wing. In fact, a lot of the CAF's social media Warbird photos were his. He was young, eager, and clearly had a future in aviation. The community reaction after the crash was raw. Friends called Devin a beam of light. Her sister described her as one of my best friends, beloved sister, and inspiration. For Zach, the CAF called him someone who had a tough go of life but found a love for aviation. Both families set up scholarships in their names, so their passion for flight carries on even after this tragedy. Now, here's where we separate rumor from reality. The NTSB combed through the wreckage. They pulled the engine out of the lake, looked at the prop, the controls, the airframe, and you know what they found? Nothing. No mechanical failures, no engine failure, no stuck controls. This wasn't about the airplane breaking. It was about how the airplane was flown. The data is cold, but it's clear. Airspeed decayed, load factor went up, stall speed increased, and the airplane dipped just below that razor-thin margin where the wings could no longer carry the load. The result was an accelerated stall followed instantly by a spin. And here's the kicker. It wasn't just any spin. It was a flat spin. The nastiest kind. The kind where the nose doesn't point down enough to let the airplane pick up speed and recover. The NTSB's probable cause is short and brutal. The pilot's failure to maintain airspeed while maneuvering, which resulted in the exceedance of the airplane's critical angle of attack and an aerodynamic stall spin. That's the formal way of saying the airplane was flown too slow in a hard turn and physics took over. But don't get me wrong, that wasn't the biggest mistake here, because a stall spin in any airplane can happen to anybody. The real issue, and the thing we need to dig into, is why recovery was basically impossible from the moment the nose broke. Here's the piece that really matters, the aerodynamics, because this wasn't just flying too slow, it was an accelerated stall, and if you've never thought about what that really means, it's eye-opening. Here's the plain truth. In a steep turn, your wings don't just carry the airplane's weight. They're carrying the airplane's weight multiplied by the load factor. Pull 2G, the wings are holding up twice the weight, and here's the kicker. Stall speed climbs with that load. You could be comfortably above the book stall speed, pull a little harder, and bang, the wing quits flying. That's exactly what happened here. Now add in the fact this wasn't a forgiving Cessna 172. The AT-6 is a heavy, high-wing loading Warbird. When it stalls, it doesn't mush or gently drop a wing like a trainer. It snaps. Abrupt, no nonsense. The margins between flying and not flying are razor thin. And when it snapped here, it didn't just spin, it went into a flat spin. That's a whole different animal. A normal spin points the nose down. You're losing altitude fast, but you at least have airflow over the controls to maybe break the stall. In a flat spin, the nose is high, the drag is massive, and the controls just don't bite. You're basically corkscrewing toward the ground with very little authority left. And here's why that was a death sentence. Even in little trainers, spins eat altitude like crazy. NASA test data shows 1,000 feet gone in the blink of an eye just to recover a normal spin. In a Warbird, you can expect to lose a lot more. Devin and Zach were at 3,900 feet MSL, but over Lake Winnebago, that's only a couple thousand feet above the surface. The math just doesn't work. By the time the airplane flattened into that spin, there was no physical way to stop it before hitting the water. And if you think this was some rare freak thing, it's not. FAA stats show more than 80% of stall spin crashes start below 1,000 feet. And once you're spinning at low altitude, survival is basically zero. That's what makes this case so painful. The second the stall broke, the outcome was sealed. Now, let's talk about the Warbird itself and the environment, because this wasn't just any airplane, and this wasn't just any airfield. The AT-6 Texan is iconic. It was called the pilot maker in World War II. If you could master the T-6, you were ready for fighters. Today, it's one of the most beloved Warbirds at Oshkosh. Crowds love its growling radial engine and that classic look. But here's the dark side. This airplane was built to challenge young cadets, not to forgive mistakes. And it shows. The T-6 will spin, but it's notorious for how much altitude it takes to recover. Many of these airplanes literally carry placards forbidding intentional spins. And the experienced guys who do practice spins, they do it at 10,000 feet or higher, because at pattern altitude, you're just not coming out of it. That's the reality. Now add Oshkosh to the mix. If you've flown in, you know it's thrilling and stressful at the same time. There are airplanes everywhere. The temptation is huge to show your passenger a nice low sightseeing lap around Lake Winnebago. But traffic's all around. Workload is high, and the margin for error is tiny. One overbank turn, one not too slow, and you're in trouble. At the end of the day, the lesson here is simple but brutal. Prevention is everything. Avoid steep turns at low altitude, respect stall margins, and remember that once a spin develops close to the ground, you're out of options. The FAA drills stall awareness for a reason, because recovery just isn't realistic down low. For the families, the legacy is already clear. Devin and Zach's names now live on through scholarships and memorials that will help others chase the aviation dream. And for the rest of us, their story is a reminder that flying is both beautiful and unforgiving. The best way to honor them is to carry the lesson forward and fly smarter. Okay, if you found this breakdown useful, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dive accident analyses, and let me know in the comments. Do you agree with the NTSB's findings, or do you think something else played a role? Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.